Good morning, my brothers and sisters, and today I have a long, a long speed paint for you guys. Lately, I have been seeing this image in my head over and over again, in particular to King David, which this entirety of this piece is called Anointing. And back in the Old Testament days, whenever someone had been ordained by God to be king or to be a priest, they usually had a horn of oil where they would pour it onto their foreheads or pour it onto their heads. And I kept imagining this image for King David. Now, the start of this, I really don't like to showcase my sketch phase during my speed paints because I do have a bit of a perfectionism problem, but I don't like to show it because it goes through the ugly stage where I'm trying to make it look good. Because I'll admit, when I do my sketches, I like to kind of draw it in a little bit just to get an idea of what it could look like. But something was off about this sketch, and this is why I usually don't record it, because I don't like to showcase the ugly stage or the hardship stage where it's like, okay, I can't figure out how to quite get this right. But you see, I'm trying. First, I do like a kind of looser sketch, then I go in more with a detailed sketch, but something about it felt flat. And it just, you keep trying to trust the process and go through with it, but it just, something about it is off. Now, I'll be honest, I do struggle with perspective, even for people. So that's why I wrote the question mark. Because I'm like, something about this is off. So this time around, I decided to start all over again, and use a reference. I came across this reference of this particular man in particular with his head tilted back even more than my initial drawing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this with a reference this time instead of trying to do it in my head, because if I try to do it in my head, it's going to look flat. And this time around, I was using the symmetry tool to keep everything, well, obviously symmetrical and more balanced. But there was a lot I liked about this reference. I liked the lighting, I liked the head position, the head tilt. So I pretty much am referencing it in regards to my own work here. Especially, it helped that the man in the picture also had facial hair, so it kind of helped with planning out where that would go to. Once I have the gist of the whole head tilt, then I start to try to add in the hair. Now, I want to say this very clearly. I have no idea what King David looked like or when he was anointed. I just knew he was 30 when he was anointed to be king over Israel at the time. So I tried to keep him young looking as possible. I also wanted to add in a little bit of a crown, but that also was a challenge for me because I'm like, what does a crown look like when your head is tilted back? Would you even see it at all? But I was initially just going to be like, no. That's why I drew in the circle here, because I'm trying to plan, okay, that's pretty much the height of his skull when it's tilted back, or that's what I wanted it to be as a placeholder for that, and then put the crown in. This at the top was going to be the horn that had the oil in it, and how the oil would be spilled onto his head or poured onto his head. I also kind of colored it in a bit. I like to do this just to give me an idea, a guide of where it's gonna go, how it may look once I add the color and everything. now to the fun part, doing the coloring. When it comes to drawing for me or illustrating, yeah, I'm going back to the reference here because, like I said, I really liked the lighting, and I also kind of liked the skin color for this. Like I said, I don't know what King David looked like, but I just liked the lighting in this reference too, so I wanted to reference that as well, because I still struggle with color and lighting, even shading. And what I was initially saying about when I draw, when I'm doing illustration and everything, is that it's lacking usually. I don't usually do realism, because every time I try to do realism, if it's not in black and white, for some reason, if color is involved, it comes off flat or unrealistic. But if it's black and white, like charcoal or something, no problem. This time, I really am going in with the shadows with the dry marker brush, I believe. In Krita, I love Krita. I just want to say that right now. If you're looking to find free software to draw or do digital artwork or digital animation, highly recommend Krita, because it's free, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and you can do quite a lot with this software. Like I said before in my switching from Photoshop to Krita video, the animation window kind of feels like it feels like, to me anyway, Toon Boom a little bit, offering the aspect of adding in keyframes in betweens, not in betweens, but keyframes, which really helps, especially when you're trying to force yourself to learn pose to pose animation, or keyframe to keyframe, I should call it. Well, I would consider it. It helps with that. The illustration, I always use big illustration or big paint too. I don't know why. I think I just like the window. I just like it. I'm trying so hard to add in those shadows. I don't know why I added in this kind of grayish color, but trust the process. I just wanted to keep it in. I didn't want him to look too grayed out. I wanted to add in more of that pop of color, just like in the reference here. Yeah, in all honesty, I don't draw a lot of male characters, especially with facial hair. And I like to tackle on these new things because I'm still in the stage in my art journey, I guess you could call it, where I'm just experimenting and I'm allowing myself to get out of my comfort zone, try something new, get better with color and lighting, get better with perspective, get better with anatomy. I still have a long way to go, but I always want to encourage this. Don't be afraid to be bad at it. Because guess what? If you're an artist like me or have a struggle with perfectionism, let it go. I mean it. Really let it go. It's hard to let it go when it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. It looks weird. It's going to look weird. It's going to look weird. It's going to feel weird. It's going to look weird. But that's the only way you're going to get better, is if you keep trying. Don't aim for perfectionism. Aim to get better. That's the more important part. I was trying to do that kind of more dynamic lighting. I've seen people do this before, where you kind of put this darker color around the lighter color, you put a Gaussian blur on it, and it looks really, really good when you do that, but for some reason it just was not working. Maybe because I made the highlight way too bright, and that's probably why it wasn't working this time around, but it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, usually if any of you have ever watched my speed paints, you usually see me dabble with the different modes, the blending modes of the layer. You'll see it go from multiply to overlay to soft light to hard light to color dodge. I think color dodge is my favorite so far. I haven't really used multiply much, but I used to use multiply all the time. When I initially tried to do shading on characters and stuff, I would always use multiply because I would use black as shading. Don't use black to shade in a character. Like, don't do the multiply layer or normal whatever and then put the opacity down and just use black, because it makes it look really flat and just listless. You really want to utilize color. Just try not to use black. Don't be like me. Open new horizons to using other colors. Even use like weird colors, you know? If you ever happen to notice in my speed paints where there are these moments where nothing is moving, don't worry, your screen is not freezing, the video is not freezing or buffering. It's just sometimes I get distracted by something even when I still have record on and I don't want to turn record off. So that's why that happens from time to time. I apologize. Oh boy, now the lips. I need to do some lip and mouth studies because I tend to stick to a certain shape. I tend to stick to these kind of trapezoidal type lip shapes. The pink is way too bright. It hurts even to look at it now and do the voiceover here, the commentary. It's too pink. Don't worry, I do change it later in the video. Yeah, like just in the reference as well, the lips naturally kind of have these creases, these folds in skin, these kind of, I don't want to say cracks, but I guess I can't think of another way to say it, like cracks. And there we go, the less pink. But they usually have these kind of cracks in it, and I wanted to keep that texture because, you know, I'm so used to like 2D animation styles where they're more streamlined, so I keep everything, usually you keep everything smooth, but I also have been kind of, to go on a little bit of a tangent with that, a bit of a segue. When it comes to animation, I lately have been wanting to make my animations more illustrative, if that makes sense, to make them more not painterly, just how do I say it, like more in-depth drawing animations, which of course will take more time, but that's just where I am in my headspace right now in regards to my animation work as well. I think that highlight on his lips is a little too glossy looking. A little. I think that top lip, I don't know, I think that gap where I have his mouth kind of open is too wide, especially at this angle. Oh boy, the teeth. Teeth vex me so. I don't know why, but they do. They just they always end up coming out looking weird when I do them, when I draw them. It's so weird. But keep on trying anyway. Now when it comes to the shading and the shadows and everything, the more dynamic, because as you can see in the reference, it's really dark. But I was trying to avoid the urge to use black. So I wanted to kind of layer it a bit with, you know, the base I had at first, that kind of orangey-ish, brownish color, and then kind of put like this grayish, and then put like a dark brown on top of that. I want to kind of give somewhat of a transition, but I know it's not really coming off like that. It's more kind of solid, but just trying it out here. How do you guys also feel about when I kind of put it on the screen? You just saw it a few seconds ago, or you've seen it throughout the video so far, where the kind of music that's playing currently shows up, kind of like a playlist kind of thing. It's like now playing this or now playing that. Does that feel right? Is it too distracting? Let me know down in the comments below. I used to edit my old videos when I was still considered Black Widow art. I used to have that on my videos because I don't know, I liked it. It was before YouTube added that I don't know what to call it. Added that feature when you add the music from the YouTube audio library, and it would automatically put it at underneath your description of your video. I would just kind of put it in just in case anyone was interested or wanted to know. Yeah, all the music in this video, I get all the music from the YouTube audio library. You know, you'll find a lot of good things in there that are, in fact, copyright free, thankfully. You also may notice that throughout my speed paints, there may be jump arounds where 1 minute I'm working on, as you saw, I was working on the darkest shade on his neck area, on David's neck area, and then it kind of looks blended here. I added in a Gaussian blur onto my shaded or my shadow layer because I wanted to look more smooth and not so streaky, because I do have a tendency when I draw to make my lines very streaky. I just kind of like that look. That's just kind of an aesthetic I grew accustomed to. But this time around, I wanted it to look a little more smooth like. I still think those highlights on his head are just a little too bright. I should have dialed it down or changed it to a different color, because it just looks like I put white on top. Okay, you learn, right? If any of you are ever wondering, why doesn't she just use the fill tool? Because often I get those weird pixels around the edges of the shapes I draw, so I rather prefer to just go in and literally just use the brush tool and fill it in myself, so I don't have to worry about that, especially if it's next to another layer like the skin layer around the ear or the neck or the jawline. and I try to use the fill tool, and I have to go in and fix those little pixels anyway. So I just figure, why not just color it by hand? The only downside to that is sometimes I'm using a tool like the marker tool here that I'm using, and it doesn't fill in the color, the base color all the way, so you can kind of see the underlaying layer underneath through it, and it's a little annoying because then you have to go in again and then layer it again to make sure you cannot see through it. But you know, it happens sometimes. But that's just the process of how I go about drawing. It's not foolproof, but it's how I do it. Another thing I struggle with is definitely hair. I tried to watch tutorials and understand it, how people would block it and make the big shapes and everything, but I still don't quite understand just yet. But I do know there is a certain aesthetic I like when it comes to drawing hair, especially with a lot of manga artists. Whenever any style where the hair is super streaky and detailed, I love those designs. And I think that's what I try to implement in my own work from time to time, but it just doesn't come off as good. Like for David's hair here, I wanted to be kind of streaky, but I really like to add in those loose strands into hair because naturally our hair doesn't. Everyone's hair has those loose strands kind of sticking out a little bit, or it just makes it kind of feel more dynamic in my opinion, but maybe not. But yeah. I definitely feel like I could have added in a bit more detail around his eyes to feel more realistic, like especially those little, because the eyelids in particular have a lot of these little creases in them that I never really paid attention to until I actively tried to draw eyes more realistically. They have a lot of these little creases in them, and I feel like I could have added in a bit more there. And I still feel like that highlight is just way too bright. Now we're going into drawing in his shirt and his robe. I didn't have anything in particular in mind with color choice. I just kind of went with the first thing that I saw and I liked. I kind of wanted to, I don't really know what a shepherd wears because David was a shepherd before he became king, and I just kind of wanted to play into that. I really don't know. But usually it's like often the robe with a usually a robe, no, a long, I don't want to say gown, no, like kind of like a long robe with a long robe on top of that and a belt or a sash around the waist. Yeah, I guess I kind of liked the pale red I chose for his robe. Yeah, I don't even think you would be able to see the crown from this angle, but I think I have it sticking up too much. But I wanted to keep it in anyway. I also didn't have any goal in mind in particular when it came to the color of the jewels on top that I wanted to add onto his crown. But right now it looks like peas. I also didn't really know what the anointing oil, actually what color it was. I tried to look up images and references for that too, and it kind of gave me, I know it was like myrrh and different spices and stuff mixed into it, but I wanted to, it kind of gave me the feeling from the images I saw through, Google search. It gave me the feeling of like olive oil. So I know olive oil was an important factor in the tabernacle when lighting the lamps, so I kind of stuck with that kind of color. Honestly, right now it looks more like honey, if anything. But I wanted to add in an effect because I didn't want it to be completely opaque. It's not like molasses, or maybe it was. I don't know. But I definitely wanted it to be translucent. Whenever you see me switch the modes, it's usually because I want to make sure that, like that note I mentioned before, about sometimes there will be spots that I didn't fill in the color, and that's usually why I'll switch between normal and then multiply or overlay or color dodge or screen or addition. I'll switch between it just to make sure I have the whole area that I'm coloring in colored in and that there's no gaps. Yeah, that was another jump edit right there, where I completely colored in his shirt and his robe. Yeah, for a second there, when I was starting to color in his hair, I couldn't understand. I was like, wait a minute. I clicked the little half infinity symbol to make it more so a clipping mask, but it wasn't working. Then I realized that little logo on the side where it's like the stacks with the arrow on it was highlighted, and I had to turn it off, and then whoop whoop, it worked. Whenever I color in hair, I like to do the darkest shading, or at least, I don't know what you would call it, the strands in the hair first. These kind of, I can't call it creases because it's hair, but try to think of it, I guess, like that, like creases in the hair, which I know that doesn't really sound like a thing, but I like to do that first, and then I go in and do the shading underneath it, or sometimes on top of it. Once again, as you can see, don't worry, your screen is not frozen. Sometimes I'm either getting distracted, where I just stop in the middle of a speed paint while it's still recording, or either sometimes my tablet may be going in and out, and for some reason the icon will not move, and it's a pain, but You know, just unplug it, blow it, and then try again. When I'm drawing his hair, I was initially going to do it symmetrical, but I was like, no, I don't want everything to be symmetrical. I want some things to be a little off, where this piece of hair is a little thicker than this piece of hair, or that strand is sticking out more than that strand. Now this is the part where I'm kind of transitioning into coloring in his beard. When I did this, I wanted to kind of keep like the somewhat of a texture, or the idea of a texture. So what I did was I just took the brush and I just did scribbles. Just a whole bunch of little tiny scribbles. It took forever. Don't worry, your screen is not frozen. It's happening again. And I just do a whole bunch of little scribbles throughout the whole base of his beard. It took a minute. It took a while, but it definitely was worth it in the end. It doesn't have to be in any particular motion. It's kind of like me doing sideways figure eights. Just a whole bunch of that. Just scribbling. I was trying to get through this part as fast as possible, so that's why I was kind of going from one area to the next, thinking it would make it faster. No, not really. I realized that the hair overlapping the face, there should be some aspect of shadow, especially for where the lighting is coming from. Excuse me. And I added that in at this point. I wanted to add in a bit more shadow because I felt like the highlight was too much. But maybe I shouldn't have? I don't know. Back to the beard. I think something about his mouth is still off to me. I think it just isn't truthfully following the contour of his face, or at least the angling of his face. We are almost there with this beard. Oh, and a little fun note with his right ear, what I did was I took the shading from the left ear, I copied and pasted it, and then just inverted it, mirrored it. Hey, I mean, sometimes, you know, you can do tricks like that, especially when it comes to animation. Oh my gosh. Almost there, almost there. You know, this was the first time, maybe not the first time, but this was one of the... I normally don't put the eyebrows and the hair on the same layer. I usually have it on separate layers, but this time I kept them on the same layer that I marked as hair. If you're like me, I'm one of those illustrators who I have like, or one of those artists who have like a million, layers, because I like to group everything and group it like, I have like this file conventioning system where it's like, okay, if I have hair, then I have the base color, I have to have it as a group. Then I have the base, then I have the shadow, and then maybe like the darker shadow that I put in there. Then the same thing for skin. I have the base, then I have the shadow, then maybe like the highlight, and then maybe another shadow. Like I have to have it all together so that I can keep it all organized. Yeah, this is what I was mentioning about like how I noticed that in the beard there were some open parts where I could see the skin kind of peeking through, which realistically that can be so, but I wanted it to be a solid one piece. I wanted to add that same highlight into his hair, but I didn't want it to be too intense like I did on the skin. Once again, playing with the different blending modes. Not sure which one I wanted to pick, but I think the one I chose was... Which one did I stick to? Color dodge. Yep. Probably. And the fun part, when I finally went in to add those little bit of highlights onto... I was gonna say the honey. It looks like honey onto the oil. Where I added the highlights may not make sense since the light is coming from above and having the highlights be shown really further away from the light, but it also was a stylistic choice at the same time. When you add those little accents of light onto any liquid surface or any sort of liquid surface, it really just it makes it less flat. It really does look like honey. I can't unsee it now. I initially had the idea to all the parts that the oil touch, I was going to make it like, what's the word? I was going to magnify those parts of the body But then I just kind of gave up on that because this took me about 8 hours. I started it at maybe about 10 p.m., didn't finish till about 6 a.m. Dawn, everything, the whole night went past me because once I started the sketch, I had to see it through. I really wanted to see it through. I've been working on multiple projects lately, and I just wanted to do something, I don't want to say quick, but I wanted to do something to kind of get out of it for a little bit, just a little bit of a break. And that's where this drawing came in. Now I'm starting the horn here. This part was actually fun because I got to experiment with another brush that I don't normally use. I wanted to add this kind of gritty texture onto it, and I tried it with this brush at first, but it felt too metallic kind of texture. So then I used this other one, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's the kind of texture I wanted to give that feel, where it kind of feels like crackles. Because normally horns, I believe, on especially rams or animals in general, are made of keratin, I believe. So usually they have like cracks and little openings on them, so on that particular surface. So I think this brush it pretty much nailed what I wanted to emulate in regards to texture. I don't normally like a ram's horn because in the Bible, like, I don't necessarily know if it was a ram's horn they would use, but it just said it would be a horn filled with oil. Usually horn is like yellowish tinged, yellow undercolor, yellow grayish kind of thing, but I made mine more brown and reddish. I was going to use a reference, but I just kind of wanted to just go in with it. And I'm still happy with how it turned out. Don't worry. I was just about to say, don't worry, your screen isn't frozen. Once again. Adding in the highlights. Yeah, you may see me use Gaussian blur a lot when I just kind of want the transition for coloring to be a little bit more smooth and not so separate. Now, one of the final parts is starting to color in the crown. It is a little jagged. It's a little not as polished as everything else was, but as I said, it was about 5 in the morning when I started doing this, and at this point I just wanted to just get it done, so I wasn't trying to be too particular about how it looks. I just wanted to just get it done, but I also wanted it to be good at the same time. I kept seeing this brush in Krita. I don't really know, it's like a shapes brush, like a random shapes one, and I honestly didn't have anything in mind. I wanted to do like engravings on it, but once again, didn't have the energy to do that, so I just kind of worked with this weird shapes brush, and I worked with that. I still feel like I can't quite nail the color of gold. For me, it always comes out more yellowish or yellow-orangish, but I'm gonna keep trying. I think that's one of my favorite parts when it comes to drawing anything metallic. It's just adding in the highlights more so on it than anything than the shadowing. The final step, drawing and shading in the little jewels so they stop looking like peas. I was trying to keep in mind how spheres work, especially if it's glossy, adding in the reflected light. And also making it up just a bit. Sorry if you can hear birds in the background. There's some birds flying past. But hey, God made them the day before he made us, right? I believe it was on the 5th day he made birds. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, you know, copying and pasting because I was getting tired and I wanted to just get this done. I just flipped it because due to where I have that key highlight little area, because since the lighting's coming from above. Also didn't have an idea for the background. I usually just stick to a simple gradient if I don't really have an idea for what exactly I want to put in the background. And here it is, anointing. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It took me 8 hours, like I said, to finish this drawing, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you will like the video and leave a comment for what you liked or what I can improve upon. And please be sure to read your Bible and stay blessed, my brothers and sisters.